Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining in here for the seventh session of the 100 Days Challenge, the expert sessions that we are doing. And we are lucky that today we have one of the best wildlife photographers and from this country, Aditya Singh, with us. And I hope you guys are keeping safe and you know, pandemic it looks like it's slowing down a bit. So hope we all get out of this as soon as possible and visit Dickie's place first. That's my target. As soon as this gets better, to go to Ranthambhore and be at Dickie's place and enjoy some wildlife at Ranthambhore. Uh, Today's session is being moderated by Rohit, and Rohit is one of my very close friends. Apart from that, he is a very good wildlife photographer also. He decided to follow his passion for wildlife and found his purpose through Nature in Focus. He co-founded Nature in Focus to provide a platform to nature lovers through a portal, an annual festival, and yearly photograph and film contest. Rohit had pursued wildlife photography for a decade and is now learning filmmaking. Wildlife conservation is something he is concerned about, and he does a bit for the same. He has kept his photographs under the Creative Commons license so that anybody can use them to build awareness about nature and wildlife. Rohit is also a communication professional and runs Narrative, a communication firm that focuses on developing and narrating impactful stories for brands. You can follow him on Twitter at Rohit Verma or Instagram Verma.Rohit. With these words, I'll just hand over to Rohit so that he can carry it forward the evening.
Thank you, Sandeep. So the person who we were talking about, Aditya Singh, he's a very interesting person. You know, wildlife photography it's very addictive. It has made a lot of people to do a lot of different things. For example, Dicky, he decided to quit his civil service career and follow his passion for the wildlife photography, and he landed up in Ranthambhore. And obviously, he did become a very well-known wildlife photographer. He won multiple different awards. But beyond that, he is a very good person from heart. And that's the reason whenever we are in Ranthambhore, we love to go and stay at his place, spend time with him, because his company plus the wildlife is like a lethal combination. So, hi, Dicky. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Rohit. Thank you.
How is it going in Ranthambhore?
Ranthambhore is going good. It's we are locked in, which is nice. We really needed to be locked in. COVID hit here pretty bad too. But other than that, we are there. We're still around.
Awesome. So before we start asking questions to Dicky, I want to play something which Dicky has shared with me, and that will give a perspective of the kind of work which he has done using his mobile phone. So just hold on, please. This is something really awesome work, Dicky. Just enjoyed watching it. I can play multiple times. It just too good. So here comes the first question, looking at the content, what you have just shown to us, the kind of images, what you have shown to us. So, mobile phone have become much smarter. Everybody has got very good phones, and every camera brand has been talking about that, how good is the camera capability of those phones. Now, that's where the question comes, is that how do you make dramatic images using mobile phones? What somebody should keep in mind when they are shooting through their mobile phones? So that's my first question to you.
Rohit, uh, 3 years ago, I would have never answered this. To be very fair, uh, I'm someone obsessed with cameras. I right now own 9 camera bodies and something like 14 lenses from 3 different makes. Till 3 years ago, if you asked me that how do you take pictures from a cell phone, I would have probably said that phone is for calling, for SMS and things. The reason was that till about 3 years ago, I didn't really use smartphones much. My phone of choice was the Nokia 2G phone because the battery used to last forever, the network was very good and things. About 3 years ago, slightly over 3 years ago, I got a Samsung S8. That was probably the first decent smartphone that I got. And I realized that now I have something in my hand which takes really good pictures. When I say really good, it is pretty close to DSLRs. Not, I wouldn't really still call it DSLR quality. Since then, last year I got the iPhone 12, the Pro version, which actually shoots raw images. Now I could probably very confidently say that if we leave aside the big telephoto lenses, my phone right now can shoot as well as any DSLR, literally as any DSLR. So the thing is, and since since I've started photographing with the phone, I've realized that over 80 or 90% of the pictures that I've taken in the last 3 years have been with the phone. The thing with the phone is like if you compare a DSLR or a professional camera to a phone, there are the one, the phone, the camera has a lot of things going for it. Like it is, there are a lot of things you can do with a DSLR. You can, especially if you know what to do with it, if you switch it to manual, they're pretty much every aspect of it can be controlled manually. Phones didn't have this kind of leeway till recently. Now phones also, there are very few things that a phone can do which a DSLR, there are very few things that a phone can't do which a DSLR can. In fact, I still haven't thought of anything. The pros for a phone is that one, the most important one, you are always carrying. You don't, like my camera kit, if I take all the camera bodies and all the lenses and all the tripods and everything that I have, I need 3 bags. Each bag weighs about 20 kilos. Now we're talking about 60 kilos worth of equipment. There is no way I can carry it with me all the time. Even if I can carry it with me all the time, there is no way I can use it
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
It takes too long to open the bag, take things out, set them up, shoot.
Yep.
Your phone is in your pocket. You can take it out, shoot with it. Your phone now, some of the top end brands shoot raw files. Secondly, your phone camera is backed by a computer, which is inside the phone. You have a processor which is so powerful that whatever drawbacks you have, the processor covers up for it. So, like the really new phones have something called a night mode. They can actually, we could be sitting outside around a fire and you can just pick up the phone and take a picture and it'll be clear. It's clear enough to be printed to a front cover of a magazine. You try doing that with any DSLR. There is no way you can do it. You will have to tell everybody sitting around the fire to stay absolutely still for 60 seconds or 120 seconds. It is not really happening. So the big plus with a phone is one, you're carrying it all the time. You take pictures and it gets stored in just the right place. You can share those pictures. You can go social with them at a click of a button, which on a camera is not, it's complicated. You have to take the picture, download it, process it, put it, send it to your phone, and then share. So phone that way is the it's the new DSLR. If you ask me, the all camera companies till recently made a lot of money on selling the low end cameras. The cameras that professionals use don't sell so much. Companies don't make so much of money on it. They made money on selling the cheap digital cameras, and phone wiped them out because your phone
Yeah.
is by and large better than any cheap digital camera.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason that whole point and shoot market died, and it is going to impact the low end digital SLRs also now.
Yeah.
So
Now,
that's going to
yes,
happen.
yes. In fact, the phones are getting so good that few years later, I would be if I was a DSLR camera, I would be threatened. A few years later, it'll wipe out the higher end cameras now. So the thing
Okay,
is,
there's one question which has come in right now with regard to the film what we have shown right to our friends here. Are there any attachments used for the phone when you have shot all these images?
no. So all the pictures that you displayed right now, this is a slideshow of about 32 pictures. All of these have been taken using either the Samsung S8 or the iPhone without any attachment, without any additional lens or and in fact, all of them have been shot on the default camera mode. That means like with the Samsung was shot on whatever the Samsung camera.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't use a third-party app. There are third-party apps that you can download which control your camera better than your default apps too. Uh, for the iPhone, I use a Moments camera app, which is actually very good, but it's not something that you have to use.
We will come to that. So let's
We'll
talk
come
about
to that.
composition, because something which people would like to know is that how do you compose your images shooting from your mobile phone?
Okay, so let me to all the people who are watching this, let me start by a 5-minute talk on what photography is. So as photographers, we like jargon and we like to make it very complicated. A lot of us are engineers who like to make things sound so complicated. Really speaking, there are two aspects to photography. Now, this is not the thought. What I'm going to tell you is not an original thought. I read it on the internet. It was put up by a photographer called Matt Cole. You can search it. It's called Matt Cole, the tech part of photography or art part of photography. Just search using these. Now, Matt had an interesting observation. He said photography can broadly be divided into two parts, one the technical part and the artistic part. Now, the technical part is what scares everyone, what scares a normal, if you ask someone to pick up a camera and like, okay, come, I'll teach you photography. And you start on the technical, we start from the technical jargon that puts off people or scares them into accepting it. It's kind of like, to give an example, for instance, I'm scared of accounts. I don't like accounting. My accountant tells me that that you have debit of that much or not credit of that much. And it kind of, these words scare me. If we put it in a simpler term, like I owe that guy this much or he owes me so much, it would make it easier. So it's the same with photography. We use terms like depth of field, hyperfocal distance, aperture, ISOs, and it actually scares people. Now, Matt Cole says that the entire tech part of photography you can learn in half an hour. If I have to put down everything technical about photography, which a normal person would need to know, you don't even need one A4 size piece of paper for that. It is simple. There are very few things. It's the real simple part. The other part of photography is what Matt Cole called the art part. Now, that is something very complicated. Generally, as photographers, we get stuck in the tech part and we stay stuck there. It is the tech part of it is easy. It's a tool that there are some buttons that you have to use. Once you figure those buttons out, you're done with it. Don't even go deeper into it unless you want to go for a quiz competition on photography. Now, to shoot, what is required is the art part. So what do you call by a good image? Let me start by explaining what is a good image. A good image, in my definition, is an image that you like. Any picture that you personally like is a good picture. Don't let anybody else tell you differently. The thing is, it's your phone, it's your photo, and it's your time. If you like it, it's a great picture. That is my definition of a good picture. Uh, a good picture. Now, sometimes what happens is, say a picture of my daughter when she was like really young. Even if the picture was not taken well, for me, it's a great picture because I have a lot of emotional moments attached to that picture. But if I show it to say Rohit will say, yeah, nice picture, like because he knows me, he'll say, oh, really cute, all that. But by and large, it's not a picture that he'll save and keep on his phone. I will. So a good picture, the definition is a picture that you like. But within that definition, we can take it a few steps further to make it a picture that somebody else will also like. Somebody else who's not so emotionally attached to that same subject will also like it. So there are few simple things, technical things that you need to know about photography. Once you figure those out, forget the tech part. Just concentrate on what you like. So the most important thing in composition, or most important thing in any photography, any work of art is actually, especially, is like you see a scene and you say, wow. Now, if you just ask yourself a question that like, you liked the scene, you said, wow, what was it on the scene that you liked the most? That I would broadly call seeing. That's seeing a good picture. That's seeing your shot. You see a nice wide forest vista with blue skies, a setting sun, orange, yellow ball, orange ball, or whatever, and it's a good picture. Now, in this, what did you like the most? It could be just the orange ball over the sun with the blue sky, just that part. You said wow to the whole thing, but in this whole big screen, what did you like the most? Once you start understanding that, you are now seeing a photograph. And then capturing it is very easy. So seeing it is the tough part. The nice thing about your phone is, because it's very flexible, it's light, you can move it around, you can see from angles which is not possible with a DSLR. Or I wouldn't say it's not possible with a DSLR, but with a DSLR, you'll be lying down on the ground, on the slush. Your phone, you can move around. So move it around. Don't take the first picture that you see. Just move it around a bit and you'll start seeing things. Once you start seeing things, you start capturing better pictures. That's how I would start anyone off.
Still, would you like to go a bit deep into how do you really compose? So, you spoke about that, what you like in what you're seeing it. You will look at the element, you will look at the character, you will look at the light, and then you start thinking about it. This is the kind of image what I want to make it. Okay. For all the friends who we have on this particular chat right now on the session, maybe you need to go a bit deep into it, that how do you keep your, where do you keep your, character or the subject, not the character, but the subject. Where do you keep it?
Okay, before we go into this part, like how do you compose a good picture, let me explain two simple technical concepts. The two things that technically are very important for photography are these two terms. One is called exposure, and the second is a term called focus. Now, we all pretty much know what exposure is and what focus is. Now, exposure in a camera is a function of three different things. One is called your shutter speed, one is called your aperture, and the third one is called your ISO. Now, I know this is going technical, but to break it down, let me explain what a camera is. So the first few cameras were what was called a pinhole camera. A camera essentially is a machine where a small hole opens up, which allows light to go through that, and to go through that hole and hit a plane, which earlier was a film, now it is a digital sensor, on which the light is allowed to hit that sensor. Now the hole opens up and closes very fast. The speed at which the hole opens up and closes is called the shutter speed of the camera. The size of the hole is called the aperture. And the film, or whatever, the sensitivity of the sensor is called the ISO. Broadly speaking, all three of them are connected. They are related to each other, and a combination of these three gets you the exposure. Now, a simple way to understand it is that you have a pipe which is 1 inch thick. That pipe throws out water at the rate of, say, 10 liters per minute. You have a bucket which is 20 liters. You have to fill this bucket. So you put the pipe on, the pipe throws out 10 liters in every minute. The bucket is 20 liters. So you need 2 minutes to fill the bucket. By this logic, the thickness of the pipe is your aperture. The time for which you kept the pipe open is your shutter speed. And the bucket, the size of the bucket is your ISO. Now, if the bucket, instead of 20 liters, was, say, 40 liters, and your pipe is still throwing out 10 liters per minute, then you need 4 minutes to fill the bucket. That means if you change the ISO, made the bucket bigger, then it takes 4 times long or twice as long to fill that bucket. If the bucket was 10 liters and you're throwing out pipe at the rate of 10 liters per minute, it will take 1 minute. So your shutter speed decreases. So changing your ISO decreases or increases your shutter speed. It's the same with aperture. If your pipe was 1 inch thick and it was getting out 10 liters per minute, what if your pipe was 2 inches thick and it was taking out 20 liters per minute? Then you need 1 minute to fill that 20 liter bucket, not 2. So you change the size of the pipe, and the time for which you need to keep the pipe open changes. You change the size of the bucket, and you need to either change the time or the size of the pipe. You change the size of the pipe and your time and the bucket. So these three are interrelated. But broadly, how they are connected, you don't really, if you want to shoot with a camera, you don't even need to know. But broadly speaking, now, how do these three things work? Your aperture decides how much of the scene is in focus. Bigger the hole, less of this, bigger your aperture number. Now, aperture is confusing because it's a ratio. So aperture of 2.8 is actually big opening, and aperture of f11 is actually a small opening. So your aperture, the smaller the number, less of the scene behind will be in focus, less and less and less. Similarly, your shutter speed decides how sharp your picture is or how blurred your picture is. Sometimes you want the blur. And your ISO is just a sensitivity thing. It doesn't really change much, but only thing is that very high ISOs, you start getting noise or grain in the picture. Now, the combination of this is exposure. Exposure, broadly speaking, for people who don't want to get into technical, is how bright and how much bright spaces and dark spaces are. An overexposed picture is a picture that is a bit too bright. An underexposed picture is a picture that is a bit too dark. So once you figure out the exposure on a phone is very easy because you're seeing it live. On DSLR cameras, you don't see the exposure live. You have to guess it. On this, you can see it. You change the exposure, you can see that the pictures become darker or brighter. Second very important thing is your point of focus. Now, when you shoot a picture, say if I'm photographing a picture outside my house, about 1 kilometer behind there are hills. If I'm photographing the hills, if the hills are in focus, then someone standing right next to the camera will be out of focus. Or if I keep someone standing right next to the camera in focus, then the hills will be out of focus. So everything in the picture everything in a frame cannot be in focus. There are certain places which will be sharp, which are in focus, and the things behind and in front of that will not be so much in focus. Now, this is a DSLR funda for learning the tech part. But in a camera, you don't need to know most of this. For one, your exposure, you can see it. If you think it's too bright, you don't like it too bright, you can darken it. Similarly, your point of focus on a camera. Most cameras have lenses which are backed by a processor so that they keep a lot of things in focus. Most of the time, if you just pick up a camera and randomly take a picture, chances are that whatever you wanted to frame will be in focus on its own without even you trying to fix it. But you can touch the spot with most cameras pick up the focus by just touching on wherever you want the focus. So you need to, before you get into composition, you need to figure out exposure and your point of focus. One cool way to understand this is just pick up a camera, sit outside for half an hour and just randomly shoot different things, change your exposure. Almost all new DSLR cameras give you an option of overexposing or underexposing the picture. It's somewhere there in your setting. And change the point of focus and see. Once you figured out the exposure and the focus point, now you're a photographer. I would say you're a proper photographer. Now,
okay, we become two questions. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah. No, so I'll come to that. Please go ahead with your question.
I just saw two questions coming up. One is talking about the limitation in terms of how many images, how many raw images you can save it on phone, because obviously the raw images are heavy. And the second question which came is that in which mode did you shoot mostly? Is it a portrait mode or a regular mode? If you're shooting people.
The camera that I have,
a phone.
The phone camera that I have, the iPhone lets you shoot RAW. Not too many cameras shoot RAW. One RAW is not necessarily that heavy a file. It's almost as heavy as a JPEG, or slightly more heavy. The thing is, most phones come with 68 or 128 gigabyte setting to save the phone. My phone actually is half a terabyte. It's 512 gigabyte. But it still gets filled up very fast. I periodically back it up, which I have to keep doing with the DSLR. We had to do it every day. I periodically back it up and save it offline. It's also connected to the cloud, so the gallery is actually being saved on cloud. But some of the modes that it shoots on don't save directly on cloud. So storage is not so much of an issue. Storage is cheap. Getting cheaper. So it's not how much, you should not even be worried about how much can you shoot. You can shoot a lot. If you have an Android, just set up a Google Photos account, buy, say, 100 GB in that. It's not expensive. And pretty much all the stuff that you need to shoot will be saved up there. So storage is, don't worry about the storage part. That's cheap, that's easy. What is the second question?
The second question was about the images what you have shown of people like Naira or other people.
Yeah.
Did you shoot in a portrait mode or you shot in the regular mode?
No, so pretty much all the photos that I've shown were all shot. Samsung S8 didn't shoot RAW. So they were all shot on regular mode. All the iPhone pictures that I shoot are shot on RAW. So that's only on regular mode. I can't go on portrait. Portrait mode essentially is, what it does is it uses the biggest telephoto that you have in your camera.
Yeah.
It zooms in the most, and it tries to blur the background by keeping the aperture value as low as possible. You can control it when you're shooting RAW on your own, but no, all of these were shot on a normal mode.
Awesome. Please, so we were discussing about the composition part of it, and so
there are a couple of interesting things for composition. One of the first few things that you need to know is, you need strong composition because you want a good picture. One of the first few things you need to do for yourself is define what is a good picture to yourself. So my take on good pictures, again, like I'll repeat it, that any picture that you like personally is a good picture. So now there are a couple of things which help make a better picture. Maybe a good picture can become slightly better. One of the first few things is you could technically define it as focal length. But if you wanted, in simple explanation is how much of the scene to capture. Like you see something, how much of that, you see a lot, our eyes see a lot, and what our eyes don't see, our brain fills up for us. But what we see is you need to first identify what is the best part of this. What is the part you like the most? So that is the first thing in composition is how much of that scene should I capture? Now in phone, that flexibility is slightly narrow because your zoom is not, because our zooms are not too much. But most phones still zoom up to 60 or 80 mm the thing. Now you keep this in mind, phones have two kinds of zoom. One is optical zoom. The other one is what's called a digital zoom. When I talk about zoom, I discount digital zoom totally. Digital zoom basically is just zooming in. You can do it on the computer. You're just zooming into the picture and cropping it out. So don't go for the digital zoom. Shoot things in the limit of your optical zoom. Now, when I say how much of a screen to capture, how much of a picture to capture, let me show you two photos here. This is a gate inside Ranthambhore National Park. Rohit, can you see the picture?
Yes, I can see the picture.
Okay, so this is a gate inside Ranthambhore National Park. And this is shot from a phone from the widest setting of my phone. Now, this is one way of, the other picture that I have is of the same scene. This one. It's the same scene. I had a choice. I could shoot quite wide, or I could shoot tighter. Now, in this, now if you ask me, I prefer the wider picture. But the first thing when you compose is how much of the scene do you need to capture? You can zoom in to capture less, or you can zoom out to capture more. If your zoom is not working, it's not powerful enough, you can walk ahead or walk back to capture more on it. So your first definition is how much do you, once you've figured out how much you need to capture, your second thing is where do you place the different objects? Now, placement is actually one of the most important things. A simple rule, or what you could say a direction, a trick is what is known as rule of thirds. There's actually a whole mathematical theory on golden mean and things like that. You could go into that, read books over it. But broadly speaking, it divides everything, a picture, into three parts, vertically and horizontally. Let me show you a picture to explain this to you. This is Jaipur. Now, rule of thirds says that if you take your horizontal and divide it into three parts, and take the vertical and divide it into three parts, where these lines meet or where these lines are, these are your strongest placements. By and large, if you place your subjects along these lines, especially where the lines meet, your composition is very, very strong. A simple way to do, when we were kids, at least when I was a kid, we used to have these mandatory art class, and where one of the most favorite thing of mine to draw used to be a scenery, where we basically had a sea, mountain, and sky. So broadly speaking, it was 1/3 water, 1/3 land, 1/3 sky. Now, if you see in this picture, I have tried to place the buildings on the line or at the cross section of the lines. I've tried to place the sun there. So this rule of third is generally a good indicator. Now, I'm not saying that if you broadly have a mental thing that, okay, the 1/3, 1/3, you just see a frame and divide it mentally into 1/3. In some of the cameras, you can actually get the rulers. They stay on when you're shooting. Even if you don't, just the other trick is if you think you're not fast enough to compose it dividing your screen into three parts, just remember this one thing: avoid keeping the subject bang in the center. Just whatever your main subject is, keep it a bit to the right or a bit to the left or a bit above or a bit below. Don't keep it really in the center. It makes for stronger placement if it's slightly off. Now, a tight photograph, if you want a photograph of my head, then obviously it will be bang in the center. But rule of thirds doesn't just work for horizontal pictures. It also works as well for vertical pictures. Like, this is my house. So you can see I've placed the entire room on one side. This pathway lighting is on one line. The other end of the path is on the other line. Now, if I kept this, even the path, the covered pathway is slightly to the left. It's not bang in the middle. Bang in the middle is often a boring picture. If you keep things slightly to the left or slightly to the right, it works much better. Off-centered is always better. So two tricks that we have spoken about composition till now is, one is how much of the scene do you capture? Second is, once you figure that out, try to place it in such a way that your main elements are not in the middle. They're either below or above or left or right. They're not bang in the center. These two things are quite important. The first one, before you press the picture, was what I mentioned about seeing the picture. What did you like the most in the shot that you want to capture? The third thing is, we have this, and it's like various photographers call it as something called a 6 feet syndrome. Actually, most pictures in the world are taken from a height of 6 feet, or 5.5 feet to 6 feet. That's because we are 5.5 to 6 feet tall. So if someone asks you to take a picture, you just stand up, pick up the phone and take a shot. Chances are that 99 out of 100 pictures have been taken from that same angle. If you change the angle, it changes the picture totally. When I say change the angle, well, I'll tell you how angle makes a difference. When you go to get a passport size photograph taken, the camera is almost always positioned in line with your eyes. So when we take a photo of someone at eye level, that means that the camera is positioned at the level of your eye, then you look normal, then you appear normal. If the camera is above the person, that means it's above the eye level, then the person looks smaller. If you keep the camera below the eye level, the person actually looks slightly bigger. So the nice thing about a phone camera is it is a few hundred grams heavy. I mean, you want to keep it here, you want to keep it down. Like moving it around is very easy. You can stand and keep it down. Like don't keep it at your eye level, but keep it, say, at your waist level, and your whole picture changes. So vary the thing. In fact, never keep it at your eye level. Don't stand up, and eye level is the worst shot you can take. So don't fall for that 5 feet syndrome or 6 feet syndrome or whatever we call it. And another important thing besides these 3-4 is framing. You frame your shot. You need to, we generally, when we see a picture, we look at the center of the viewfinder. In the case of a camera or phone, you see the screen and your eye naturally goes to the center and you forget the sides. Remember the sides. Your 4 sides are very important. What are you cutting? What are you not cutting? If you can say, if you have 2 trees on 2 sides and your subject in between, you have framed the subject using those 2 trees. There are a lot of things which you can frame here. You can frame this stuff using clouds, using sky, ground. So look at the sides of the camera before pressing the shutter. It just, I mean, it just takes a second. Instead of just looking at the center of the image, see the sides also. There are things which you would have absent-mindedly added or cut off from the screen. So look at the sides. Always look at the sides. By framing, I also mean another important thing in a framing that I want to have is something called a foreground. You always need a foreground. Foreground is interesting. By foreground, I mean the stuff that is there towards the camera, the things that you're capturing which are closer to the camera. Say you want to capture a mountain. Mountain's nice, but you need something in the foreground to give it perspective. To give a mountain, for instance, let me show you this. Most of the pictures that I'm showing you are taken in my house and of my family and my daughter. This is my daughter. She's 9 years old. She's tiny. She says, this is a water hole that we have where we have a lot of frogs and things. Now, I wanted to capture the water hole and the blue sky behind, but I needed some perspective. By putting her in the corner of the frame, I've actually given some depth. Now you can, if you look at this picture, you can make out by keeping her as a reference, the size of the pond, the size of the landscape, the size of this. If she was not there, it would be difficult to make out how or what the whole scene is about. So you need something in the foreground. Foregrounds are very important. Foregrounds are as important as your background and your foresights. So when you say your placement, you have to look at what is before the subject, you have to look at what is behind the subject, and the foresights where your pictures finish. It takes it seems like it's a lot, but if you just practice enough, like shoot for like a week, 10 days, a month, you will start seeing this automatically. That is your composition. That's it. The second thing now is, so now this is composition. Everybody knows it. It's quite simple. There were just like 5 or 6 things that I told you. I've pretty much, if you ask me, these are the 5 or 6 rules or guidelines that I follow. Chances are about 99% of all the photographers in the world follow this. So the guidelines are cool because there's so few guidelines. They're actually pretty easy to figure out. Now what happens? How do you actually make better pictures than the other 99% who know these guidelines? The way to do it is that you need to know these guidelines. You need to understand what these guidelines do. You don't have to follow them. Best pictures are done when you ignore these rules. So how do you ignore these rules? Like,
now you are really confusing
you might think that, okay, no, but what I mean is you need to know the rules to break them. You need to know the rules to break them. Once you figure that out, now you are shooting differently. So you have to see things and think, how would, keeping these rules, how would you take a picture? You want to go a step further than that? Now think that keeping those rules in mind, how do I ignore those rules and get an even better picture? Change your angles, think differently. Top down, like, okay. So for instance, let me show you this one picture. This is a lily, that pond that I'd shown, this is a lily out of that. Now, it doesn't follow any one of the rules as such. The subject is bang in the middle. I didn't go eye level, low level, nothing. I was almost vertically above the flower. I'm not saying this is the best picture in the world, but it's a different picture. I mean, I've shot these same lilies from 10 different angles. This is a picture that I like far more than the other. It doesn't follow any one of the rules that I told you till now. Now, the reason, when I say why you need to know those rules or those guidelines is that if you don't know them, you don't know how to break them. So you figure out those guidelines, they work 9 times out of 10, but they don't always work. When they don't work, then trust yourself. See, I'll repeat this again and again and again. It's your phone. It's your picture. It's your time. It's your space. It's your digital space. It's your money. So, it's your judgment then. Yeah? It's your trust. You think this is how I'll do it. This is how you'll do it. Period. You paid for it. You can listen to other. Phone to aapka hi hai na yaar. So end of the day, that's the story.
Awesome. This is really interesting. So yeah, but this is very important that if you know the rules, then only you can break it. And you're breaking it to make the image look more interesting, more dramatic, more appealing, not only for you, even for the other viewers of that image. So I completely get that, the point which you were trying to make it. Now, there's another point which I wanted to understand is that when you shoot the images from your mobile phone, do you edit them on phone or you edit them on your laptop, desktop? If you do it on phone, what kind of applications, tools do you use it?
Okay, so some of the pictures that I shoot on the phone, I actually process them using Photoshop. My preferred software to process is Photoshop. Some of the pictures that I shoot, I process them in Photoshop because I shoot in RAW. Very, very few. These are typically pictures that somebody wants for publishing. I recently got together a set of 30 or 40 pictures of the lakes of Ranthambhore for a book that is coming up by someone. And pretty much all those pictures I shot on the phone because it was easier to shoot panoramic pictures with the phone than with the DSLR. And, because in the last few months, because of lockdown, the park has been open, shut. And this was just a few days before when the national park was being shut in Ranthambhore. So I had just 1 or 2 days to go shoot some pictures that were required. So I actually went on safaris for 2 or 3 days and I shot everything using a phone. Now those pictures are actually processed on Photoshop, but I personally like the best way to process pictures is to use the default edit option that comes with your phone. Most of the phones, when I say most of the phones, my experience with phones is I've only used a Samsung S8 or an iPhone. So I haven't used all the other phones, but the Samsung S8 comes with a very good default edit option, which is the Samsung edit option. They work really good. Otherwise, you can download Lightroom for phone, Lightroom for mobile. That's quite nice. I don't use Lightroom on my computer, but Lightroom for mobile is quite nice because it has these slider options. So you have an option of an auto edit where you just press one button and it will get it right. I don't take it wrong. I've been using Photoshop for more than 16, 17 years. I started with the first Photoshop. The default option of that press a button gets it right better than me 99 times out of 100.
Rakesh, can you mute yourself? Rakesh, can you mute yourself, please?
Yeah, so you guys have to go slowly. My internet connection is very bad. I live in a village outside Ranthambhore. I don't have a cable network still. So Rakesh, what were you saying? I'm sorry. नहीं मेरे को समझ में नहीं आया आप फिर से रिपीट करेंगे
Aditya, he is not asking a question. उसका वो unmute था इसलिए कुछ उधर बात कर रहा होगा. That came.
हाँ वो आ गया है.
Yeah, all right. So that was it. So जो Lightroom mobile is quite a good option, but you don't really need it unless you think you need to give the picture to some agency which is going to publish it. Even then, I think your standard editing is really good. I do have Lightroom. I do use it quite often, but most of the time it's a default edit option.
What about the storage? Because you end up shooting so many images. I'm not talking about the capacity in terms of, but the way you store it. Is it by the occasion? Is it by the year, month? How do you do that? Because it's confusing because you might want to pull up an image which you have shot a year ago, and you might it will be a struggle because you've got thousands of images on your phone.
Yes, so that's always a struggle. That's always been a struggle with DSLR, with cameras too. Ideally, you should keyword your photos. In an ideal world, you should keyword your photos. So keywording is every picture has these built-in picture property which is embedded in the photo, in which you can go put keywords, and when you search using keywords, those pictures come out. For instance, I could put in keywords like the location, say India, Ranthambhore, sunrise, forest, and now if I want to find a picture many years later of a sunrise and a forest scene in India, if I put sunrise, forest, India, all the pictures with that tag will show up. Now that's easier said than done. Basically, if you shoot like how much I do, I shoot about 5 or 6 days a week. Now I get 1 day off. If I start keywording my pictures, I will spend a lot of time keywording. Ideally, you need to keyword them. Since we don't, even the most dedicated photographers I've met have a massive backlog of keywording. Like my pictures that I have to keyword, the backlog goes down till 2006 or 7. I mean, I'm 14 years or 15 years. So that's not going to get. So the storage is now, most cameras save the picture, a lot of the Android cameras using the year, month, and day initially, and then the picture number. If you shoot in RAW on iPhones, it actually gives it a 4-digit number after IMG underscore. So what I do is when I back up the phone, when I get it offline, when I connect it to the computer and move all the pictures, I make a folder with that date. The day I backed it up, that is the date. So in my phone, there are like 7 or 8 folders, with different dates. Still finding pictures is not easy. I'll give you an example. I think a few years ago, and a magazine that I work with, they wanted a picture of a banyan tree. Now, I probably have thousands of pictures of banyan trees, and I started looking for them on the computer. And I spent a fair amount of time. And then my wife came and told me that, like, there's a banyan tree right outside our house. Where did you go get a picture? So I actually went and shot it again because that was the fastest. So storing is a problem unless you keep it. That is a problem. Storage space is not so much of an issue now. Right?
Yeah. I was more talking about the workflow management in terms of saving the images in a particular manner or style.
So the option is to keyword them. That's the only option. Keywording is time consuming. It's slightly a bit of a pain. Sometimes what I do is, if there's an event, for instance, any event, say friend's birthday party, and I was there with a phone, because we have a reputation that we are photographers. People generally assume that you want to shoot their birthday parties free. So what I do is, whatever pictures I've taken at that time, I just pull them out at that moment into a separate folder in the gallery. So it saves as a separate folder. Just easier to do it. But that's only for an event. Otherwise, you're searching for pictures all your life. That's welcome to my life.
Awesome. So I think it's time.
Storage is a mess. Unless.
Yeah, I was just saying that it's time that you start taking more questions from the audience, because there are a lot of questions coming in, and we are at 5:55 right now. So the one question is that about the print quality, comparing with a mobile phone versus DSLR. So do you think that you can actually print images shot from mobile phones?
Yes, you can. There is no such thing. There's nothing that says that you can't print pictures shot out of mobile phone. The National Geographic front cover is one of the toughest front covers to land, for whatever reasons. National Geographic used an iPhone 4 picture for the front cover. You've got to keep one thing in mind, that all media agencies, like you run a media agency too, Rohit. All media agencies are very, very crazy, I'd say obsessive about the image quality, this. But if you give them something stunningly rare, you could have shot it from any phone and they would happily print it.
Yeah. I remember, I think 2 years ago in our contest, one of the images were shot from mobile, which actually won an award.
Yeah, so exactly. So I mean, if a tiger kills a leopard in front of me and I shoot it with a phone, everyone is going to, no doubt about it. Secondly, I'll tell you what happens with phone pictures is, if you take, this is particularly true of cameras which don't shoot on RAW. If you take the picture import it to your computer and see it at 100%, the picture is cracking. That is because the picture is probably 4,000 pixel by 2,800 pixel or whatever. If you reduce the size slightly, the crack goes. And unless if you have a very, very basic phone, most decent phones are good enough to make it to the front cover of any magazine in the world. Now, how big do you want to print it? Like, if you want to print up your picture 10 feet by 6 feet, phone may struggle. But for a front cover of a magazine, very few of us are going to print bigger than A4.
Yeah.
Till that size, it prints brilliantly.
So I think, that is a question which came from Karan, and there is lot of questions are talking about the pro mode on the camera.
Okay, so I didn't even get into pro mode here because 1 hour was not enough for pro mode. Pro mode actually is slightly complicated. Maybe we could take up the pro mode. You guys, if you have questions for the pro mode, maybe Sandeep could just put them together, send it to me, and I can answer them all, and then we can just put it up.
Yeah, because there are a lot of questions about the pro mode. So maybe that will be a good option, that we document all these questions and you can answer them.
That would be a good option, or you can just put tag Sandeep on social media somewhere or send it to me. But if you send me the question, I'll put them up, surely.
Yeah, there's one very important question which has come up from a very, very important person, and I cannot say no to him.
Yes, sir.
And the person who was sitting with you yesterday evening, and he
Mr.
wants
Verma?
to ask a question. Yeah, he wants to ask a question, sir, which DSLR to buy?
Yeah, actually, yesterday, so we have this friend. I need to show you one thing before we close this. When we say phone photography, there are things that phone does better than DSLRs. These are the other stuff that we don't talk about. For instance, time lapse, hyperlapse,
Yeah,
videos,
yeah.
panoramics. Let me show you.
By the time you look for an image, there's another question which has come up is about the best gimbal for the mobile phone.
Videos, and there is the man. Phones take damn good videos. Phones also take really awesome, what do you say? Really awesome panoramas. This is some festival that happened in Ranthambhore. There is no way, I mean, DSLRs also take panoramas. This takes it far easier, far faster, far better than DSLR. DSLR, it would have taken half a day to process this. The panorama thing, the other thing that I like about panoramas are vertical panoramas. We always shoot panoramas sideways. Try shooting them from down to up. It makes a damn nice picture. These you can print to huge sizes, really huge sizes. And other very interesting thing that I like about the phone is what I would call time lapse. Easy, so easy to set up on the phone.
Wow.
It's quite easy to do it on a camera, but you have to process it. All the phone does it for you. You just sort it. The other interesting thing that is, it's like a time lapse, but it's hyperlapse. It's slightly faster than a time lapse. I love doing it with moving cars. Just put the phone in the dashboard and let it shoot. This is a drive. It looks like we're going rally speed. We're actually really slow inside the park. But these are some of the other interesting, like really cool stuff you can do with phones. The other nice thing on a video is slow motion. Slow motion, beat this. There's a frog in a house. There it goes. Just stitch these together into a short film, and we got it going. And for a friend who asked me that question, invest some money. 12 Pro is the way to go, my friend. Put in some money. He's also the only guy making money right now. Huh?
He's the only guy. Yeah, we are all sitting at home. He's the only guy who's making money. There's no dispute about it. Two questions we'll take it up before we close the session.
Yeah, sure.
One is about the pixel capacity on the mobile phone cameras, importance of that. And number two is about the best gimbal for the mobile phones, if you can give some advice.
Okay, so a really good gimbal is the Osmo, is the DJI Osmo. I don't use it. I have something which is more of it's a mechanical gimbal. It's slightly weird, but it works. Osmo is a really, really good gimbal to get. The other thing is now with new phones, the image stabilization is so good that you don't really need a gimbal. Last year, a TV shoot was done in our place using phones, totally iPhones. The cameraman didn't use a tripod or a gimbal or anything. He was just hand holding it with one hand. And this was a TV broadcast. So if you want to get a gimbal, get the Osmo. It's really good. But wait, I mean, you don't really have to get it, because that makes the problem with the gimbal is it's one more thing that you have to carry. Phone you're carrying, you can carry quite easily. Gimbal was not designed to put in your pocket.
Yeah, the
But the
stabilizer
Osmos,
is so good. Yeah, stabilizer is so good. You actually don't need to have a gimbal.
yeah. But uh,
And
and the other question was about, you said about
the
the pixel.
importance of the pixel capacity on a mobile
Yeah.
camera.
So, the first digital camera that I bought in my life was the EOS 1D. That was the Canon camera which came out in, I think, 2003 or 2004. It that was the beginning of DSLRs. That was the first proper hot DSLR to come out. I mean, that killed film cameras totally. The EOS 1 was a 4 megapixel, to put it in perspective. I have pictures from the EOS 1 that I had an exhibition 3 years ago in Delhi. I printed pictures 6 feet by 4 feet from a 4 megapixel. So megapixel is an overhyped thing. Anything more than 4 megapixel, 5 megapixel is good enough for an A4 size print. So most phone cameras are shooting at more than high definition resolution. If your longest side is more than 1920 pixel, you're doing very good. You don't really need to.
Awesome. So one last advice before we close the session, and there are people who are really interested doing a photography, and mobile has become a great device because it's very handy, it's very, very compact. It has got good cameras, it's got good sensors. So as a device, it's doing the job what it's supposed to do it. Uh, but one advice which you would like to give it to anybody who wants to take mobile photography seriously, creating some really, say, dramatic, astonishing images.
Get a tripod. Get a small tripod. A Joby is very good. Or any desktop tripod is really good. Get a case for it, and look at getting a third party lens. Some of them are really good. Like I still haven't got it with me because of the lockdown. It's in Delhi. I got a Moments 2x lens that goes over this camera, and it doubles my effective range. You can get a macro for it. There are some good third-party lenses. They're tiny, they're small. Get a tripod, get this. But more importantly, before this, the most important piece of advice is just go out there and shoot. You need those. You need your 10,000 hours. You do anything for 10,000 hours, and you are really good. So go get those hours. 10,000 is 1,000 to karo. So
That's a
start.
great advice. Shoot more as much possible. Jitna kar sakte ho, shoot karo.
Yeah,
Any opportunity, every opportunity, seize it, shoot it, and review your own images.
yeah. You're the best. You're the best judge. It's your phone. It's your liking. So, but you have to shoot a lot.
Yeah, I completely agree. So Sandeep, just to put the things in perspective, when I got into wildlife photography, I have told Tiki after a few years, I did reach out to a few of the people to get some advices to understand that. And this is one thing which Tiki has always maintained. So when I reached out to him a decade ago, he told the same thing, that shoot and shoot and shoot more. Look at your images, figure out what is going wrong, what is right, what is wrong. And today also he stand by that particular statement, saying that shoot as much possible. And that's where you improvise, because every time you analyze your image, every time you review it, you figure out that what things you have missed on or you have not missed on. So that's a great advice. I think we had a great session. It's just that we have gone up by 7 minutes. And but yeah, me and Dicky can go on talking for another 1 hour. And the rest of the
Thank you, Dicky.
rest of
It was a
the
wonderful session here, actually, and shooting. I'm so fed up of just shooting the birds in my backyard now. I need to increase those hours. It's been almost 15 months, and the moment I this purchased that 1D Mark IV, उसके बाद से lockdown हो गया.
Yeah. Okay, so Sandeep, there were some people that wanted to ask questions on the pro mode and things like this.
Yeah.
So I told Rohit that just take those questions down. Maybe you can send them to me. I'll answer them, and you can put them up.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
you can put on your blog so people can refer it.
Yeah. So we'll if you have any questions, when you take pictures, and if you have some queries, maybe a couple of weeks from now after shooting, just send it to me. I'll send it to Dicky, and he'll be happy to help you guys. And thank you, Dicky, and thank you, Rohit. Wonderful session. Thanks all participating.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
thank
Bye.
you, Sandeep.
Thanks a lot. And this will be on YouTube, so you can, if anybody want to share or so they can always catch it up. And for any questions, you can just mail it to us, put it on social media or anywhere, and I'm sure Dicky will respond to you. Thanks.